small groups, and I'm working out a small group commune of some of my friends. If we like each other in this world, let's make a date. We'll meet in, say, 2040 for a reunion, if and when science works out the solutions. And by the way, I feel that your attitude towards dying or immortality is the key.
We're going to let him catch his prime. Make everything sound psychedelic, don't you?
Gordon, you just can't boogie.
Probably not, but I can sing. Try it.
Straight and slow.
Straight, at any rate.
Oh, beautiful for spacious night, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains mad, above the fretted plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
What do you think of G. Gordon Liddy?
I know only about him what I've seen on news programs from the Watergate, and he seems like pretty much of an asshole.
Oh, wait, Timothy Leary, all I can think of, was he the one that was with the dope?
I've never heard of Gordon Liddy.
I don't like him.
What about Timothy Leary?
I don't like him either.
Timothy Leary, I grew up in the 60s, and he was, made into some sort of a folk hero. Personal opinion, he's not a folk hero of mine.
He sounds kind of crazy to me.
But I've come away with the feeling if we had 100 G. Gordon Liddys in Vietnam, we probably would have won the war.
Timothy Leary, I don't know that much about him, but I equate him with freedom of, well,
It's very hard to have an opinion. I think just that there's been a lot of bad things.
and I equate Liddy with.
Leary seemed to have some sense, being a professor of psychology at Harvard University, a man of quite a bit of intelligence. And Liddy, to me, has fascist inclinations due to his authoritarian type being.
Yeah, he's crazy. I think they're both a little nuts.
Positions are theological and dangerous. If they drop out of society, how in the world are they going to participate and contribute anything to society?
Gordon, I've not said the word drop out in years. I tell young people, turn on, tune in, and take over. Everything is going to be legalized when the baby boom generation.
He's a very charming and engaging guy.
Talk, Liddy. Put him down.
Huh? I'll put him down on stage.
Carol Hemingway, and I'm here tonight to moderate this evening's event. You're here to witness a debate between G. Gordon Liddy and Dr. Timothy Leary, two men from opposite extremes. G. Gordon Liddy, Watergate, the mastermind of the bungled burglary. He had a code, and he lived by it. Dr. Timothy Leary, conducting scientific studies, was seen to have influenced a whole generation into taking dangerous drugs. These two men here tonight.
Now, you wrote the memo that set the DEA.
Yeah.
And you masterminded Operation Intercept, in which you sealed off all the cities, allowing all the grass to come across the...
Well, the purpose of Operation Intercept
I know it.
was not as advertised. It was to seal the border so as to create economic turmoil. And we expected them to sue for peace in about 30 days. In fact, 2 weeks later, they said, what do you guys want? And what we told them we wanted is, look, we'll give you all the airplanes. You guys have to fly them. It's going to be over your territory. And when you find the opium poppy and the marijuana and everything, we dump the paraquat on them.
So to stop American kids from smoking grass instead of drinking horrible whiskey, you forced an economic blight upon the poor peasantry of Mexico.
No, the poor peasantry of Mexico would stop growing marijuana. We wouldn't have to do things like that.
Well, what is business? This is the American government. What the
stuff was coming
what the
over here.
peasants
That's what
of
I mean. If they
Vietnam
want,
and the
look, if the
peasants
Mexicans
of
want to
Honduras
ingest
and the
all that
peasants
junk and whack themselves out by the peasants,
using
so long as the
Vietnam
peasants,
that you were using in
the peasants
Mexico.
don't poison the children.
And it didn't work, did it?
No, it did work. It did work.
Yeah,
That's how we got the
sure.
paraquat program.
Gordon, what movies have you liked to see recently?
I just saw this Road Warrior, and it's really good.
It's your kind of
really
movie.
good.
You're one of the fathers of the punk movement in this country.
I'm not sure I understand what the punk movement means.
It's a compliment.
Okay, because it means what it went when we were in the joint, you know, and I had to punch you in the mouth.
No. You're a flaming heterosexual. I've heard you say that.
Yeah, well, let's go on.
That's a pretty courageous thing to stand in front of 2,000 or 3,000 people and pronounce yourself as a flaming homosexual.
Hetero.
A flaming heterosexual. I'm sorry. Well, what's the response to that?
Well,
women must be attracted to that, are they?
Well, I don't know. From time to time, I have, for example, a young lady got up and in the midst of a discussion with the audience on the Iranian situation, asked my opinion of group sex. You know, somewhat non-pleasant. Well, I asked her, you know, how big a croak do you have in mind? I don't know.
Gordon Liddy and I met 16 years ago this spring. At the time, I was a member of a research group called the Castella Foundation, living in a large estate in Millbrook, New York. We were studying conscious alteration and mind-changing drugs. We were a rather middle-aged, middle-class group. Now, before we sat down to dinner that night, I made an announcement. It was a warning. I said, our spies, our agents throughout the county have told us that there is an ambitious young prosecutor in Poughkeepsie and a wicked sheriff who are planning to raid us tonight. So please stash your dope outside. About midnight, we all went to bed and were settling our brains for a long springtime nap, when suddenly out in the hallway there came such a clatter and smash, the door opened, and there, in my bedroom, is this Peter Sellers as Inspector Clouseau? No, G. Gordon Liddy, surrounded by 12 armed and booted deputy sheriffs with very unfriendly and nervous looks on their face. My wife, with great presence of mind, pointed to the corner of the room and said, "Don't touch my pot." As soon as those offending letters P.O.T. were said, 26 paranoid police eyes turned. Mr. Liddy walked over and said, "Obviously a high grade of marijuana. Label this for evidence. You're under arrest." Well, I was handcuffed, led to jail. I was never indicted. I was never tried because there were no laws against peat moss at the time. There will, with the Reagan administration, I'm sure there will be. But I must say this for Gordon Liddy. He's a man of great perseverance and intelligence, so he kept harassing us. He kept busting us. He kept raiding us. And he did indeed run us out of the county. Now, for this, he was promoted to the Nixon White House as the world's leading drug expert. So in a sense, I feel I helped Mr. Liddy's career, and between the two of us, we helped bring down the Nixon administration.
As you are about to learn, Timothy Leary and I disagree on virtually everything it is possible to disagree on in this world. And that includes the facts and circumstances surrounding our first meeting. Yes, indeed, he had set up a headquarters in a 1,500-acre estate in Millbrook, New York, which happened to be in the county in which I was an assistant district attorney. You have yet to see conservative until you have visited Dutchess County. Of all the counties in the United States of America, whatever possessed this man to set up his fruitcake headquarters in Dutchess County? I mean, what did he expect was going to happen? I am going to have a bit of difficulty this evening with the program because we are here in Los Angeles. And although I have been studying hard all week long to learn how to speak mellow as a second language, I am not yet the master of it, because every time I think I know what it is, I go to another party and I find out you guys have all collected together overnight and changed everything the next day.
The manager is a lot more philosophical and decides on a particular concept. Okay, for example, 9 months ago, when the first call came in for the Liddy Leary bit, that was not my idea. But what I did do is I all of a sudden said, wow, this is the way to elevate. At the time, Gordon was much bigger than you were, unquestionably. At the time, Gordon was getting 4,000, and we were having our hands full pushing it.
My wife, Sherry.
Hello.
Hi, Sherry.
Nice to meet both of you. This is Ricky Marin. She's his wife.
Hi, Ricky. How are you? Nice to see you. My wife, Frances, Ricky Marin. And you are?
I talked to the veterinarian in Washington. Yes. I actually talked to his wife.
Arnold, how are you? Good to see you again. Listen, my son Tom asked me once again.
I saw him in Washington.
I know he did, and he asked me again. He figured that I'd see you here.
Yeah.
And he said, "Fellow, again, great job. Thank you very, very much."
Oh, you're welcome.
I promised to sign that man's book. Excuse me just a second. I want to sign that book. Here we go.
How Saturn and Mars changed places within a week? They were this way. Remember, they were this way, and now they're this way?
Yeah.
That's what freaked out the angels. That was their television show.
My wife, Frances.
Yeah,
right.
I think when my office got moved to the basement, it was probably right around the corner from where you said you sat.
Yeah,
as I
the
recall.
room 16, probably. Yeah, well, you know that.
Because I was in the big office. You know where Nixon kept the tape?
Yes, I do.
Now, medals 1 year.
Yeah, my son recruited me into the effort.
Yeah, your son graduated from St. Albans?
Yes. With
Timothy. My brother? Or
Yeah,
Teddy?
and Teddy.
Teddy, yeah. So he was like a year behind my
So
brother.
then I really didn't have much chance to do anything or to grow very much because everything was, my full time while he was in prison was taken up with the teaching and with the children and the lovely finances.
It's incredible that you do that.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing when I look back at it now.
Franz, I think it's time that you really busted out and we're in Hollywood with the most intelligent, wonderful people. And
They say now that the funniest thing in the world with Gordon is he's the biggest name in Poughkeepsie now.
I know.
We weren't on the air at the time. They asked him for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, a sound check. We gave it to him. He asked me for a sound check, and I told him they were all under arrest. Nobody leave the room.
Oh, right, Heilman. He's still there. The other day, he may be buried by now, for all I know.
Jim, which way did Bob go? He's standing right here. Do you see which way he went?
I'd like to find him. Find him and bring him back. Bob's got the cocaine.
In my opinion, for us to achieve our human existential ends, we must cooperate one with another. Mutual supplementation and cooperation to achieve these ends. And without that, no culture, no music, no theater, no roads, no hospitals, no judicial system, no agriculture, nothing. Where does that lead us? There is a duality in the nature of man. He has an individual nature and a social nature. Morality flows from man's individual nature. If one is the only human being on the face of this earth, still have morality. But if one is the only individual on the face of this earth, what need have you for laws? What need have you for rights? You are the only person here. Those things flow from man's social nature. And so there is this intrinsic difference between law and morality. And to the extent that the common good as a whole contains and subsumes within it the individual goods as parts to a whole, the common good transcends the individual good. That is, as you say here in Mellow, where I'm coming from. Thank you very much.
that is where G. Gordon Liddy is coming from. Dr. Timothy Leary, where are you at?
It's my duty at this point to expose my admirable adversary as a member of a very dangerous, disorderly, and destructive group. He cannot deny it. He's a self-confessed lawyer. Now, lawyers are trained in adversary process. They're intellectual hitmen. Lawyers worship precedent in the past. They are not interested in truth. They are interested, of course, in marshaling evidence, cover-up, twisting facts in every way possible to win their case at the expense of fact. The real difference between us, 180 degrees, is not left wing or right wing. It's past versus future. And Mr. Liddy is definitely facing backward, moving into the future, if at all, this way, worshiping tradition. And I'm a futurist. Now, I have news for Mr. Liddy. Gordon, history ended in 1945. In 1945, of course, that was the time of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and nothing has been since the same, and politics really has to be shuffled and dead all over again. Most of those men that did combat saw it as a test of manhood, as a rite of passage. They saw it, unfortunately, they got addicted to it. I call this the Legionnaire disease. The men who went to World War II and came back thinking that the goal of America was to conquer the world and to continually be at war with some enemy. Once you establish a war as your basic goal and defense as the first thing of a country, you've done something insidious, anomalous, and terrible. You've started another war on another front, the home front. Let's look, for example, at what the World War II generation has done since 1945. They have totally bleeped up. Take, for example, national security. After 36 years in which they've wasted trillions of dollars of our precious national wealth, after they've killed several million people and wounded millions of people and really destroyed our morale both internally and globally, the military now come and say, the Russians are ahead of us. In other words, we're losing. How about that? In 1946, the most amazing event in our history, perhaps in human history, happened. Totally unpredictably, the birth rate doubled. That means that people born between the years 1946 and 1964, there are 76 million of you. We expected about 36 million. We knew that right after World War II there'd be a little bulge and then we'd go down again, but there are 40 million more of you than we expected. We had to double the diaper factories. We had to double the primary schools. We had to double the colleges. Now we're having to double the jails for you. There's not more crime per capita now. It's simply that there are twice as many of you as we expected. My appeal to you, my logical invitation to you is going to be as follows. Number one, let me talk to the Legionnaires. Gordon, please listen to me. It's time for you to turn on, tune in, and drop out. And for those of you born after 1946, turn on, tune in, and take over. Thank you.
All right.
I would like to address just briefly a couple of those things, all right? With respect to the business of World War II, I would just point out that were it not for those fellows who are now in the American Legion and the other things that you have just mocked, we would all here be speaking either German or Japanese. You have to get to the point of pain. It doesn't do you any good until you get to the point of pain, really. The whole idea is when you're in competition with someone else and you hit the pain barrier, you should welcome it, because that means your opponents are experiencing pain, and to the degree that you are able better to work right through the pain than they can, you will defeat them. In an exercise like this, of course, the contest is with yourself.
This is a word processor. This is to the mind what Nautilus, the machine, is to the body. I use this to expand, to accelerate, to strengthen my mind. I have my book, the complete manuscript of my current book, in this word processor. When I've come to the final revision, I can ask one of the technicians here, and she will press a button, and my book will go directly to the printer. This has liberated the writer from the shackles of the big monolithic printing presses and publishing houses. It encourages me to change, to improve, to grow.
Gordon Liddy, all of us know the story about your willingness to kill Jack Anderson for acts which you thought were traitorous to the United States government. If he were here now, would you kill him?
No, and I'll explain that situation to you. There was never any thought in those days of moving against Mr. Anderson physically, even after he had cost the United States of America probably one of the finest technical sources of intelligence information we ever enjoyed. We were actually listening in as Brezhnev, Kosygin, and other top Soviet officials would drive about the streets of Moscow in their big Zis limousines, speaking back to the Kremlin and car to car. They believed securely over their car phones. The Central Intelligence Agency was monitoring that, and we were getting all that information. Jack Anderson found out about that. CIA learned that Mr. Anderson knew it. It was so important that Richard Helms, who was then director of Central Intelligence, himself went to Jack Anderson. As a matter of fact, he bought him lunch and said to him, Mr. Anderson, please don't publicize that. We'll lose this fabulous source of information. Now, Anderson promised that he would not. Subsequently, he did it anyway. Still, no thought of moving against him physically. It was not until word came that Anderson had just identified one of our human assets posted abroad, with the result that the man was either already dead as of that morning or was about to die under exquisite torture, that I was assigned to meet with Howard Hunt and a Dr. Gunn from the Central Intelligence Agency, who was an expert on assassination. And our task was to draw up a recommendation for a plan of action which would guarantee, that was the operative word, that Mr. Anderson would not repeat this conduct and kill somebody else. Well, one, they used the word guarantee, and I couldn't see how you could guarantee that Mr. Anderson wouldn't engage in any particular conduct again unless you killed him. And secondly, they had me consult with an expert on an assassination, which was sort of a clue. This guy knew more ways to whack you out than there were moves on a chessboard. And so, we sat down and discussed it. And the first thing we discussed was whether or not we would be justified in this instance in a homicide. And I assure you, if there's anybody left in this country who does not understand that from time to time, for very good reason, this country engages in homicide. They do.
That's against the law.
Now, the position I took was, if Anderson had only betrayed, or it was in prospect that he was only going to betray technical sources of information and we were not in war, then no, it would not be justified to kill him.
Well, I just want to make one thing perfectly clear here, coin a phrase. I'm pleading not guilty on all of this, all right?
Well, you always have. That's why they gave you 20 years.
He also refuses to talk. Exactly.
20 more.
Each and every one of us is a miracle. Now,
the position I took was, if Anderson had only betrayed, or it was in prospect that he was only going to betray technical sources of information and we were not in war, then no, it would not be justified to kill him. But inasmuch as Anderson had killed already, and given the way he responded the last time he was asked to cease and desist in that kind of activity, it was sort of a given in the problem that he would indeed continue this conduct and he would kill again, that then, yes, in order to protect the lives of our people abroad, we would be justified in a homicide. I so recommended, but the White House said no, too severe a sanction. For that reason, Anderson still lives. Were he to walk here now, he would continue to live. Of course, he doesn't do that sort of thing anymore. He has learned that it can be hazardous to your health.
Carol, I'd like to comment on that. I think this man used the word kill, 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 Jack Anderson killed, Jack Anderson killed about 11 times. I heard no evidence here that Jack Anderson killed anybody. And that whole controversy about, I think it was the guy in Athens, was it? Or that, but in any case, this charge that Jack Anderson killed somebody is totally false. Liddy was willing to kill Jack Anderson because of this false charge. There's much controversy about that. Publishing information is certainly something that under no circumstances should be penalized by assassination. This notion of assigning homicidal and murderous acts to someone who's done that is exactly the danger, because he could then say, well, LSD killed Art Linkletter's daughter, which it didn't, by the way, and then he could, he could kill me. We have plenty of laws in this country. We have too many laws in this country. And certainly murder is well covered by laws. So if Jack Anderson really did kill anyone, let's bring him to trial. It's called the American way, Gordon.
Jack Anderson did cause the death of someone else, but it was not the fellow in Athens. It was the fellow over in, I think, Pakistan.
We don't know that. You see, the CIA could have done that.
I want to point out that in those days, there was no other alternative. There were no laws which would reach that kind of conduct by Mr. Anderson. Since then, the Congress of the United States has indeed passed a law which would reach that conduct, and such an occasion would not rise under the present law, because he would be prosecuted under that law, and that would take care of that situation.
What's most important to you?
Loyalty.
Loyalty. How far would you go with loyalty?
Up to, but exclusive of Malamin, say.
Which means evil in
Something
itself.
Evil in itself.
And that's by your own definition of what's Malamin in
It has to be. Each of us acts according to our own conscience.
But if it's each of us acting according to our own conscience, then we can really get in a lot of trouble, because we may see it quite differently.
Well,
What
it's true.
evil in itself is to you may not be evil in itself to me.
That's correct. But you see, I am not going to accept your definition. I'm going to accept mine, nor would I insist that you accept mine.
Well, that's not true. I mean, you were willing to kill people in order to accept your definition.
No, I was willing to kill people when it was for what I believed to be a good reason. In other words, I had taken a prudential judgment. Obviously, in World War II, the Germans, whose motto was Gott mit uns, meaning God is with us, believed in their cause. Obviously, the British and the Americans believed in theirs. You had two opposing viewpoints, and history was written by the victors.
You know, but the point still remains that you talk about the fact that when you were burglaring Ellsberg's office or Fielding's office, that had someone come along and got in your way, you'd have done anything you could short of killing him or her, but you would not allow that person to get in the way of your goal, which was to rob Fielding's office and get Ellsberg's files. Now, if I had been walking down the street...
We were going to photograph them. We weren't going to take them.
Okay. If I had been walking down the street at that time, and I just simply noticed this, I wasn't going to go away, and I said, I'm sorry, sir, but I'm going to call the police. There's a burglary going on there. You have stated in the Playboy interview you would have killed me.
No, killing, by definition, is not Malamin se.
You are breaking several laws.
Heaven forfend.
And, well, I think that ought to be thought about, G. Gordon Liddy.
Of course I think about it. I think about it very carefully before I elect to do so, depending upon how important is the law, the degree of thought that I give it.
I find it just terribly difficult to think that I could be your victim because I happened to walk along the street while you were committing a burglary. I cannot
You could get run
find
over
the
by
one...
a truck.
But that isn't... Of course I could, but that's an accident. That's not by your design, because I'm in your way as you are carrying on an illegal burglary. I mean, that is a killing of an innocent person.
The way I would view it, yeah. Well, innocent people do die in battle, and the way I would view it is you would be, not in my way, you'd be in the way of our country.
Well, that's how you view it.
Yeah.
I view you in the way of our country, going into people's offices and stealing.
I understand
Okay.
that, but I'm not terribly concerned with how you view it. Because what counts to me is how I view it, not how you view it.
Well,
because I'm inner-directed, not other-directed.
Okay. Unfortunately, how you view it results in actions in this world that affect other people.
Of course.
Supposing your son were the person in your way, and your son said, Dad, I'm not moving. In fact, the minute I leave here, I'm going to call the police.
What you're saying is there a circumstance in which I would kill my son? And of course there is.
And that
but by the same token, I know my son, and I do not find a likely prospect.
So that your loyalty to your country supersedes loyalty to anything else?
It has to.
Now, does that loyalty to your country include loyalty to President Carter, for example, when he was...
I would never have done the Watergate burglary for President Carter. I would do the Fielding burglary for President Carter or any other president of the United States, because it had nothing to do with politics. It had to do with the security of the United States.
Right. Now that we've killed a few people off, what do you think happens after death?
Nothing.
Nothing. So how do you live your life?
To the fullest.
In every way? What do you think about love?
By definition, it's an act of the will.
Do you love your wife?
Yes.
How long have you been married?
It will be 25 years in November.
You selected her not necessarily on the basis of romantic love.
Correct.
On what basis did you select her?
The progeny that would result from the union.
And why was she selected?
Well, I examined myself, and I said, what are your strong points and what are your weak points? Now, what I met was a woman who's 5 feet 9 inches tall, whose father was in excess of 6 feet and a champion athlete, and who, as I do crossword puzzles, does differential calculus for amusement. When the FBI transferred me to Indianapolis, IBM transferred her to Indianapolis because they had just sold their mainframe computers. That's the biggest stuff they've got. She went out there, wired all those computers, and then taught the United States government how to use them. And she was then 26. She's a math genius. The best way I've heard it expressed is by a Hindu couple who said to me, you in the West marry those whom you love. We in the East love those whom we marry.
So you grew into really a more loving relationship. Do you think that monogamy is possible in our modern world?
It's possible. It's very hard.
How about for you?
Very hard.
What does your wife think about that? How does she feel about it?
She's aware of it. She's not terribly happy about it. She finds ways to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. What if she fell off the wagon? Would you divorce her over it or anything?
No, heavens no.
No. What would you divorce her over? Would there be anything?
Oh, if she would, betray our country or something like that, sure.
What about Gordon's sex life? Yes, what about Gordon's sex life?
Never mind Gordon's sex life.
You're the one who said something about Gordon's sex life.
You're the expert on Gordon's sex life.
Well, you keep telling me it's all in my imagination.
Right.
Thank you.
His sex life is in your imagination.
I create this large bevy of women that are following him everywhere. And I certainly, I think with the media and the press people, and when you pick up the phone at home, and some woman's voice come on, and she is so sure of herself and so arrogant, and she says, I wish to speak to G. Gordon Liddy. And you say, well, I'm sorry, he's not there. Could I take a message? Well, she said, I must speak to Mr. Liddy right away. Like, who are you standing in the way of my phone call? They have this, I don't know, there's something about the age group, their whole attitude. Now, they probably just want an interview. And then that's interesting when they come for the interview. And they sit there and they have a little wine, and she inches further and further over on the sofa, and Gordon never introduces me to her. And, is that right?
There's never been an interview like this.
Oh, yes, there is.
All in your head.
Funny, that interview was done by People magazine about 3 months ago.
They're notorious trollops.
People magazine.
Oh, yeah. They'll do anything, those girls, for stories.
I know.
You're in trouble, Gordon. Women have that. I tell you, a woman instinctively knows those signals so quickly, and you men are totally slow and ridiculous picking it up. I know the second a woman is going to be difficult with me.
Well, I just want to make one thing perfectly clear here, coin a phrase. I'm pleading not guilty on all of this, all right?
Well, you always have. That's why they gave you 20 years.
He also refuses to talk.
Exactly.
20 more.
I was delighted the other day when I flipped on the switch of the TV early one morning on one of these early morning shows, and they had someone come on and say, we are now going to give a marvelous course on what a woman should do who's afraid to ask a man out for a date or out to dinner. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Here in Los Angeles, they certainly need it, because these women don't know enough to ask a man out for dinner. They always ask them directly to bed. Now, on the East Coast, I think a lot of the women do need to be more open and free, and probably need a few hints on how. Well, you've seen that marvelous ad for Sherry?
No, Sherry?
Sherry, you know, the cocktail Sherry, right, and how to ask the fellow upstairs down for a glass of sherry. This is quite proper
Well,
to do.
actually, it isn't at all, because the second you ask a man out, even just because, and Timothy's the way I have a few friends I go out with, and they're just buddies, thank God, but I asked a man I didn't know well to come out to dinner with me, he'd assume I was trying to pick him up or
Certainly.
go to bed with him. And I don't want that assumption made just because I want to spend time with a man. Because I'm monogamous.
I am staying out of this entire conversation. This is an absolutely no-win
I'm
conversation.
certainly going to get on this conversation more often because it gives me a chance to talk, and usually you're the one that just from the beginning to the end keeps going, and now I have an opportunity to have my voice heard.
On important issues. On important issues.
Well, it's quite an issue of today's age.
Francis, don't you think that the sexual revolution, excuse the horrible expression,
Oh, I don't think it's a horrible expression
which
at
has
all.
given more options to women, given more courage to women, confidence to decide what they want to do.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you wish you were being brought up now or coming up as...
Well, you know, I had 5 children, ages 18 to 23, 2 oldest being girls at 21 and 23, and I've had this discussion with some of the boys, too. They have so many options open to them at such an early age when they're really not ready to handle a lot of it, that my kids, we're very fortunate. Our children are very solid, perhaps because they had so much controversy and problems come in an early stage, they had to mature. But among their friends, a lot of these young adults are having real problems on handling all this openness.
They had problems before which were worse because they were problems of guilt and secrecy and confusion and ignorance. The problems today, at least, they're out in the open. You can talk about it.
Well, yeah, but not necessarily. You take the old-fashioned, the girl who would like to go to bed with a young man, and back in the older days before the pill, and when she had, God would come down and strike her dead, or the devil would come up and get her. She had this...
Sounds better.
I'm with the devil.
I'll go for that.
She had this feeling that, gee, I can't go that far because suppose I get pregnant. Then the poor girl, whether she has the guilt of a religious background, she has the guilt of, gee, I've given myself to somebody and he doesn't care. And then she has to carry that. And I think that's just as bad for the woman, the young woman, as it is for the devil's going to come up and grab me, because she's given the thing she values the most, and she's ready and open and young. And
at least she can talk about it now. She can talk about
Yeah,
her
I
girlfriends.
agree.
Her girlfriends that don't go for a creep like that the next time, or see Marvin Mitchelson for your alimony, or the ability to openly discuss it. See, there are many rhythms, and many stages and many options, and that what one person does not necessarily good for the other. The old way was monolithic. Keep your legs crossed or we'll kill you forever.
Yeah, but then there's another problem that comes.
The only acceptable pill was the St. Joseph's aspirin, clasped tightly between the knees.
But then there's another problem that comes along with this.
Oh, that's cop humor.
Generally speaking, you can divide the population in any prison anywhere in this country into 2 parts. One are the convicts. The cons run the prisons, not the guards. And it is because of this room temperature IQ that the guards have. Now, the convicts are persons who, although they might not have much formal institutionalized education, generally have a lot of street smarts. They are the kind of person who can put a gun in his fist, walk into the First National Bank and say to 25 people, stick them up. You are talking to about a very forceful and aggressive dominant personality. That's the convict. He views prison as an occupational hazard. He spends his time in prison after making the best deal he can with the prosecutor to spend the least amount of time there, just figuring out what he did wrong, what mistakes, so that when he goes out again, he can do it right the next time and not get caught by the police, okay? Now, that's one half the population. The other half of the population are the prison guards. Now, just ask yourself, what kind of a person would put himself in prison for 30 years? Look, here's your typical prison guard is a man who wanted very, very much to be a police officer. He applied, he flunked the test to get in. A few of them actually managed to get through the screening and the test to get in, and of course they get washed out in the academy. Then they try to be firemen. They flunk that too. They can't go back to the farm because their father won't let them play with the machinery because they keep breaking it. And finally, out of desperation to avoid starvation, these nitwits become prison guards. They like to think of themselves as peace officers. They are not. Never, ever mistake a prison guard for a peace officer or a police officer or anything else.
Obviously, we have to have social organizations. I believe in bridge clubs, I believe in families, I believe in friends, I believe in stock groups, I believe in collectives, I believe in cooperations, I believe in corporations. Sure, I endorse all that. I think these groups have to make laws which govern traffic lights and every other aspect of our life. But there's one form, see, you can drop out of all those. You can move from any of these organizations, even family you can. But there's one form of organization which is involuntary, and that's the modern state. Now, every state in the world, America included, is a mafia. Because once you get in it, they won't let you out. Now, I love America. America's the greatest mafia of them all. But still, they say, we own this turf, and, you have to pay extortion fees. It's called taxes. But I give no rights to the state. The state has only the rights that we individuals, moving in groups together, give it. And there's no God-given obligation on our part to blindly accept the laws of the state. Let's definitely restrict them.
What I'm doing in my lectures and the debates, and I hope I can get this through to Liddy, is that we've got to give young people hope, we've got to give them programs, we've got to give them courage to take over.
Yes, it's very interesting about you and Liddy. He talks about the past, you talk about the future. What do you offer? What can you offer now, here, today? What is the offer that you make?
Well, what I'm urging young people to do, and old people too, because you're as young as the last time you've really changed your mind, started fresh. But I'm simply pointing out the demographic fact, which is a monolithic fact, that 76 million of them between the ages of 18 and 36, they can control, and they will control America.
Okay, but what
as a political entity.
What blueprint, what plan, what can somebody grasp onto?
Well, basically, I'm a cheerleader. It's not for me to give them the plan, except to encourage them to do it. Number one, they don't want war. Number two, they believe in space. For example, do you know that young people spend $8 billion a year, Carol, on video arcade games, those space games?
Oh, yes.
That's more...
for boys.
Yeah. That's more money than our grown-ups in Washington spend on the real program. The Russians and the Japanese are spending more on real space programs. Now, space is one of the futures. That's where the energy is. That's where the new frontier is. If we had a program that the kids in the ghetto and the young kids that don't have jobs, say we have an enormous homesteading of space. And I'm not talking about Star Wars. I'm talking about space platforms, which the Russians already have. I'm talking about using the shuttle, which was designed to be a Greyhound bus. If we had an all-out program to double the lifespan, to move out into space, to offer jobs and new techniques, there'd be a sense of hope. And Americans, particularly young Americans, need a frontier.
So you're a hope seller.
Yes, I'm a hope seller. But my hope is scientific hope. It's based upon projections from NASA.
But what do you do about it, Tim?
Well, I go around. I give about 40 college lectures a year. I'm on radio talk shows. I write. I've got 2 books coming out this year. And all my books are based upon scientific facts which give hope to individuals to stand up and control their destiny.
Timothy Leary is just not a household word right now.
I'm not worried about that at all.
the least of my problems.
And I'm wondering
I'm
if...
a scientist, and I'm not trying to be a pop star. I'm not,
well, then why are you...
I'm publishing my books. I'm getting my signals out to a large number of people. But
well, your act is pretty showbiz. With Mr. Liddy.
Well, thank you. I hope that it's entertaining and electrifying, and that it keeps people's attention.
Oh, you are drawn to showbiz.
I love, I think that DNA operates in showbiz. I think these flowers are showbiz. I think that attractiveness and the ability to get attention is part of the function of being a teacher, or part of the function of being a human being.
I still don't have any concrete...
I must tell you, dear,
the concrete...
My dear, I've got to say this again, and I'll repeat it. The #1 factor in politics, in science, in religion today is demography. It's the new science. And the first, you're going to hear that in the next 10 years, you're going to hear it. You heard it here on this program first, that age, demography, baby boom is the key to the future.
May I say that I've heard that many times.
Very important.
Very
It's the key to everything that's happening.
But it is not the key to tell somebody to be sure that your minister was born after 1946, to vote for somebody who was born after. It's divisive. You're doing again what you did in the 60s.
But that will force the older
people. And how did your message get distorted?
But that's going to force the older people. If I were a person if I'm born before 46 and I heard this message, and I thought that some young people are listening, I'd get my act together and I'd listen to the younger people.
Out of fear?
Out of interest, out of self-interest, out of curiosity.
Then Dr. Timothy Leary, since you were born after 1946, what do you really have to say? Why should I listen to you? Why should my sons listen to you?
Every older group can't understand why the younger group doesn't get off on Frank Sinatra, or on Elvis Presley, or on the Beatles, or so forth. Now, when I was in prison, for example, and I've gone through life, I could always tell the age of a man's first orgasm by the kind of music that they like. And, now, I had the good fortune that when I was 40 years old, I started taking re-imprint drugs. So I have lost my virginity, and I have re-inactivated my sexual circuit. In the early 60s, it was Miles Davis, Sketches in Spain. I've taken LSD at least 50 times behind the Beatles and Rolling Stones, so either right aside, their access goes. Oh, I haven't given up my Benny Goodman, and no one's ever going to compare with Helen Forrest singing All the Things You Are, right? If you really want to get off.
Tim came to Harvard, which I suppose is the most crucial nodal point in any discipline in American academia, and he blew it wide open. He said, we're going to stop lying to people, we're going to stop manipulating people, we're going to make our medium reflect our message. And it was one of the big bombshells that started humanistic psychology. Its importance cannot be overstated.
Once you understand that you are hardwired, genetic, imprinted, only then can you transcend it and not be a victim of it. And I used to go around to cocktail parties. I say to people, what percent of your behavior you think is robot? Well, the real dumb ones will say 0%. Gordon Liddy, I'm master of my stage. Yeah. Right on, Gordon.
I know what traveling with Tim did to me. So I have some suspicions about what traveling with Tim is doing to Gordon.
Of Timothy Leary.
Yeah, any of you know him?
I think I did some of his
acid work.
Back in 1967, up until CIA captured him, he was really cool. When he turned in all the dudes that helped him escape from CNC, he turned into a snitch.
Well, there's one thing I want to say, that he says that is not true. What he says is that the government put that label on him and they stamped that on his jacket to try to get him, to scare him into turning snitch, and that he never did. And just, to be fair to him, I wanted to point out what he says.
That's
I wasn't there.
That's very
probable.
Well, how did you feel about going after Timothy Leary?
Were you afraid of him as a person?
No.
As an innovator?
Not only that, Tim Leary, I got to say this for him, that when I busted him, he was really cool. I mean, he never got
probably
excited
high.
or anything else.
Probably tripping.
Well, be. As a matter of fact, he
This
did
isn't
say...
happening, man. It's all
He
a
did say one
bad
time
dream.
when I came in, he said there were laser beams coming out of my eyes.
Hey, Gordon,
So,
you know what one of the guys said? Your writing abilities must coincide with your breaking in abilities. No wonder you got caught.
In defense of my breaking in ability, as distinguished from my writing ability, I'd like to say that if you took all the different places I'd broken into, starting in 1958, my batting average is about 900.
That's pretty good. I wish mine was that good.
Now, when I was disillusioned was the year 1960. In the electoral contest between Richard Nixon on the one hand and John Fitzgerald Kennedy on the other. And at the time, I was a special agent of the FBI assigned to investigate the activities of those people who, amongst other things, were charged with, allegedly, stealing the election by that great American practice of stuffing ballot boxes in Texas and Cook County, Chicago, and other such things. And I was a young man at the time, and I said, heaven forfend, look what's going on here. And then, of course, there was 1963 or 64, when it was Barry Goldwater's place that was broken into, and there the wiretap was put in. And, of course, that was page 23 news. Every 4 years, these kinds of activities take place. How are they justified? You engage in combat in an arena by the rules that obtain in that arena when you arrive. You don't make those rules up. But you had better learn them rapidly if you intend to win. If you want to go into the Roman Colosseum against the armed and armored gladiators, unarmed and unarmored, be my guest. But do not do so under the illusion that you will have any chance of defeating them.
You're implying that LSD is not as popular today. The
No.
facts are...
I'm not implying anything. I'm really asking a very honest question. Do you think that LSD research is still a valuable scientific tool?
Absolutely. It's a scandal that all our government has done in the last 20 years is to try to find a painkiller that won't make you feel good. I mean, think about it. Fortunately, young people are now taking over the laboratories. Those born between 46 and 64, they're now at the ages of 18 and 36. They're just coming in, you know, as Wozniak and Job did the computer. There are many, many, many young people moving into the laboratories. We're getting more and more good drugs coming out every day, new versions. So there will be much more research done. See, it's all, I have to go back again. Nobody born before 1946 can understand, you know, any drug except booze. Because that's the way they lost their virginity. What's wrong, you know, good enough for, granddaddy's good enough for me. But everyone born after 1946 knows that booze is about the worst kind of, aphrodisiac, if you're going to get into that. And when these young people take over the laboratories, you know, listen, in 1988, there'll be 76 million young kids, baby boomers, holding the country, you know, in their hand. They're going to decriminalize and legalize marijuana, and there'll be more money put into brain drug research and life extension research than there is in weapons.
Thank you.
A firearm is an inert object. Had I a loaded revolver right now, I could cock it, put it on this stage, and walk away, and 2,000 years could go by, and nothing will happen whatsoever. What has to happen is human agency. Someone has to pick it up and use it. That use can be for good or for ill, like everything else. What we need is human control, not handgun or firearm control.
Your name?
Carol, I'd like to just make a one-sentence comment there. I find it curious that Gordon thinks that since Pope Innocent III, they've tried to control guns, crossbows, and weapons. They can't, so therefore, let it happen. Gordon, they've been, every pope and every bureaucrat in history has tried to control drugs. It hasn't worked. So the same argument that you use for gun control, I accept for drugs.
What has happened to these priorities that should come out in this debate tonight? These are the things that are really going on, not whether you can smoke dope or not, or take a little bit of acid, or shoot something up in your arm, or kill a man because he murdered somebody else, which I could agree with myself. But the real important issues here are, the Bible says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things shall be added unto you. Kill for Jesus! Kill for Jesus! People, and Almighty God will one day, O'Leary, Almighty God will cast people into hell. The scripture talks about binding their hands, and you'll be smoking a joint when God casts you into hell. And you ought to repent instead of trying to smear me and make a joke and act like a clown, which is how you've debated Mr. Liddy all night. You ought to deal with the basic fact that the God of judgment will judge you one day and will throw you into hell and will kill you if you don't repent. That's what you better come to grips with.
All right, Gordon.
But what the basic thing is this, Mr. Liddy. What the hell happened to the friar training?
Cool it. Let's talk mellow and get Gordon's in.
Let me respond to the gentleman. What I said yesterday was not that Christians had killed more people. What I said was that my study of history has led me to believe that there has been more human blood spilled on the face of this earth in the name of one God or another, or one organized religion or another, than for any other reason. I didn't single out the Christians for it.
It's not a debate, my friends. This is an encounter between two alien groups of people. And we must try to make, I feel that I'm not a leader, Gordon. I have no followers. I am, because your generation has no leaders. I am your cheerleader. And sometimes I'd like to consider myself an ambassador from those born after 1946. I have, sociobiologically, I must tell you, see, I have changed species in midstream. Although I was born long before Mr. Liddy, I caught on. The future belongs to the young. So I have, I'm a traitor to my genetic gene pool.
Individual. If you were the only human being on the face of this earth, what need would you have of laws, rights? You're the only person here. Be totally irrelevant, wouldn't it? But you'd still have your morality, wouldn't you? Morality comes from the individual nature of man. Law, rights, and the rest of it from his social nature. And so we have two distinctive academic disciplines. The discipline of morality, which is called ethics. The discipline of law, which is called jurisprudence. So, can something be immoral and still legal? Sure. Can something be illegal and still moral? Yes. Remember that always.
When you were sworn in as a lawyer, did you believe in the rule of law? And if so, when did you stop believing in it?
Yes, I believed in the law. I did not stop believing in the rule of law. But my legal education was sufficient to couple it with my historical education. And so I understood what Cicero said and meant when he said that laws must hold their tongues in the midst of arms, and tribunals fall to the ground with a peace they can no longer enforce.
So, in your case, what was the greater good by violating the law?
What we had going on in the 1960s was, according to James Reston, columnist for the New York Times, noted liberal, a situation in which the Republic had not been in such danger since the Civil War. Acres of the cities of this nation were being just laid waste by flame, as if they'd been bombed. People were going out shooting at police officers just because they were wearing a blue uniform, killing them. There were 2,000 bombings in 1 year. Tens of thousands of people would descend on Washington en masse, not to assemble, to petition peacefully for redress of grievance, as is encouraged in our Constitution,
but with the announced purpose beforehand of shutting down the government of the United States. Those are the kinds of conditions we're talking about. Nothing at all like it is today. You have one, sir?
Yeah. In the Times review of your debate the other evening, they claim that you were exploiting your notoriety in order to pad your bank account.
That same concept is don't buy books by crooks. In other words, if you have an individual who's been convicted, for heaven's sake, don't read his book. Now, if you believe that, then at least be consistent. Never let yourself be caught reading a book by O. Henry. Never let yourself be caught reading a book by Francois Villon. Never let yourself be caught reading a book by Daniel Defoe, or Anwar Sadat, for that matter. In other words, any one of a host of persons who have, for one reason or another, at one time or another, done time.
Have cheer, we'll travel. My name is Timothy Leary, and I'm a philosopher and a scientist. But I should abbreviate or punctuate that by saying I'm a humanist, philosopher, scientist. That is, I think that the human spirit is the key to evolution and knowledge. And the theme of my work and my life is the evolution of intelligence. Now that distinguishes me from those philosophers and scientists who believe, for example, that, humanity can't evolve very quickly. It takes millions of years to change. Or that the golden ages were in the past, in Rome or in Greece, or when some religious leader walked the earth. I believe that human intelligence is evolving very quickly, particularly these days. And I think that everyone in this room, in our lifetimes, can go through as many changes and metamorphoses and mutations as the butterflies go from cocoons to caterpillars to beautiful, colored, high-flying creatures. I have been very controversial in America, as you probably know, for the last 20 years. All this started in 1960 when I was a psychologist at Harvard. And that's a pretty hot thing to be if you're an academic and want to be a professor. But I wasn't very happy about it because as a psychologist back then I realized that we simply didn't know how to change human nature. In 1960, I stumbled upon a tool which does allow the human being to make rapid changes in consciousness and intelligence. In 1960, beside a swimming pool in Cuernavaca, Mexico, I took 8 so-called sacred mushrooms, or psychedelic mushrooms of Mexico, and I learned more in 5 hours this experience that I had in the preceding 15 years of training and research as a psychologist. So I went back to Harvard, and with a group which eventually numbered about 35 people, we gave brain change, mind change experiments using drugs, using these techniques to a couple of thousand people with no casualties and with high batting percentages of life change, insight, revelation, so forth.
So you advocate LSD, or you did?
No, I never advocated LSD or any drug, but I do defend the option of the American citizen to make intelligent decisions about who or what to put in your body.
If it expands your mind, how do you account for negative experiences with LSD?
The terrible thing about every form of technology, whether it's nuclear energy or guns or cars or drugs, stupid people use these energies stupidly and intelligent people use them wisely. And it's our job as members of a complex society to do everything in our power to teach people how to use all these energies intelligently as part of an overall life plan, not in a way that's self-destructive.
You use the terms stupid and intelligent a lot. What do you think determines this? I mean, do you think that some people are smart when they're born and some people are going to be stupid, or do you think it's how they use their intelligence or how environment affects them?
That's a wonderful question. See, before the last 10 or 20 years, all science, Darwin evolution and the physics and the thermodynamics of entropy and so forth, all said there's nothing you can do to change. Psychology said you were born with an IQ and it was tattooed on your head and, you know, tough luck if you weren't smart. I'm telling you, you can double your intelligence a week if you know how to do it. The use of, particularly the use of computers and gearing your minds and brains to video games. I have an 8-year-old son who can do video games and computers, where he's making judgments in 3 seconds and pattern analysis of video games. Video games are real training for the life of the future and for the use of computers. I simply am not talented that way, but I can appreciate his intelligence, and I can link up. The wonderful thing about intelligence is we are all smart in different ways, so the thing to do is to make alliances and make collaborations and clubs that you cover this part and I'll cover that part. This is the new kind of social unit that's going to develop, not on the basis of race or creed or class or anything like that, but a linkage of people who've evolved their intelligence in different ways. Remember, Jefferson said it, and I totally agree. The purpose of America is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Empty, you can say.
You ever shot anybody?
There's no statute of limitations on that kind of activity. But nice try. John Sirica would be proud of you. There's always a big argument between using a semi-automatic pistol and a revolver. And there are an awful lot of people who think that a semi-automatic pistol can be fired more rapidly. But as you can see, you can pump the lead out of a wheel gun, as we call them, pretty rapidly. Ready on the left and ready on the right. This device makes me feel that I'm sort of entering Timothy's world now, because this is a laser sight. And, Timothy's into lasers and all this space and Star Wars stuff. We'll see what happens. It's a good fight proof, and the laser is fine.
What you're seeing here in a video game arcade is the literature of the future, the movies of the future, the television of the future. This is the primitive beginnings of a new way of communicating, not just entertainment, but education. You're going to see Shakespeare in the future in video arcades, in which the kids and the adults are not just going to be passive observers watching the boob tube or watching even the greatest movies. They're going to be in it, participating. They're going to be playing the parts of Romeo and of Hamlet. Furthermore, they're going to be doing their science on video games. They're going to be right in the center of an atom. And when an electron hits a proton and explodes into a new form of energy, instead of being in the textbooks, in reading and writing, they're literally going to be learning, performing, mastering chemistry, physics, astronomy with machines of this sort. Video games are like the invention of the wheel, and we're the first stages of ABC. But within 10 or 15 or 20 years, we're all going to be Einsteins and Newtons and von Brauns, because it accelerates thinking, it tremendously intensifies and complicates sequence pattern analysis, and we can live and experience the chemistry and physics that we read about.
So why would you bother to create an industry, a technology which is only pollutive, when you can organically transfer yourselves to other planets?
Sir, he's already gone. He went a long time ago.
Your name, sir?
My name is Rosendo, and my question is directed at Dr. O'Leary. First, so you'll be able to answer my question in a better manner. Let me inform you that I did serve in Vietnam with the Marine Corps. I came back, and I was shot on the face with a shotgun. I have over 130 pellets left on my brain. My eyes are made out of plastic. And the people that did this got the false courage to do it because they followed the teachings that you put out in your books. And because of this false courage, I stand before you, and you made a statement that you have never seen a victim of drugs, and that I stand here, and because I do believe in God, I forgive you for your cheap thrill. Thank you.
Dr. Leary,
How do you feel about that? Seeing somebody in front of you because of your teachings in the condition that I am, Mr. Leary. Answer me that question.
Did this happen to you? I'm very sorry that this happened to you. Did it happen in Vietnam?
No, this happened here in the States by people that follow your teachings. They were high on LSD, and because of the LSD, they got the false courage to do what they've done.
Well, I certainly am opposed to that, and I think that's the most terrible thing I've ever heard. I denounce the people that did this to you.
You renounce it, but I'm asking you, how do you feel when you made a statement that you have never seen a victim of the teachings that you propose and you prophesize and you pass off on your books and all that, that get high on a cheap thrill of drugs instead of getting high on a natural thrill?
Well, I've done more, sir, than anyone in history to warn people, to prepare people, to do exactly the opposite of what you're talking about. I'm very sorry this happened, and I assure you there were no teachings of mine that would ever... I'm a pacifist. I've always been that, and no one that ever picked up a gun, drunk or sober, could say they're a follower of mine.
Teachings. They were looking for a cheap thrill in drugs. They used LSD, the false courage that LSD gave them. They got, and they were under hallucinations. They were under some kind of trip that house was there because of the colors, because of the bushes were jumping around it and all that. They had to start shooting, and here I am, sir. So, thank you, and I hope you can sleep very peacefully. When I bump my face on walls, when I stumble and trip. God bless you. Good night.
God bless you, and good night.
Dr. Leary, how do you feel?
I feel very sad.
My question is addressed to Mr. Liddy. In the 1930s, Adolf Hitler had passed the Führer laws. He had become the law of the country. And instead of having an American flag hanging behind you, I would suggest perhaps it should be a swastika. Okay?
Oh, no, come back. Wait a minute. Come back and let me answer you, or do you lack the courage?
I have the same courage as yourself, Mr.
Fine.
Liddy.
What you are displaying is a lack of knowledge of the history of your own country. You appear to be more knowledgeable about the history of Nazi Germany than you do about this country. So let me briefly enlighten you. Throughout the history of the United States, presidents whom we revere as having been particularly good or effective have indeed, when they believed it important to the Republic, sent troops down into Mexico. It was a violation of the law. When Franklin Roosevelt authorized naval engagements on the high seas against the German forces when we were not at war with them, it was a violation of law.
I'm talking about the personal experiences we had in childhood that determined...
Well, the personal experiences I had in childhood were having my, for example, German maid, who in 1936-37 thought Adolf Hitler was the greatest thing since baseball, and who would listen to the shortwave radio. And while you were listening to Benny Goodman, I'm listening to the Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler sing Markische Heide. My father walked in. He was furious because he just emptied the mailbox, and here's a whole bunch of Nazi propaganda from the German embassy. And here's his son, in whom he normally was well pleased, although not that particular night, listening to the shortwave radio, because she was my nanny, what the British call nanny, you know, and I spent a lot of time with her. And so he fired her and explained to me that Adolf Hitler was a very bad guy whom he believed was going to plunge the world once again into war. And then he replaced her with another German girl, who was 18 years old, named Sophie, as a maid. But Sophie, there was a difference. Sophie was a German Jew. She... No, the point is she gave me quite a different viewpoint about what was going on under Adolf Hitler over there. I was just wondering, do you dream in black and white or color?
I don't dream as much as I used to because I take an inordinate number of drugs which open up which voluntarily open up those areas of the brain which are considered dreamlike. So that I dream on schedule in Technicolor, holograms, polycolor, special effects, and...
You're way ahead of me. I dream in Technicolor. Although sometimes it'll be black and white with a particular individual or object in color. A particular kind of dream that I have rather frequently, and I'm just wondering if you do. And that is of free flight. You know how when you're in underwater in a swimming pool?
You do?
You know how you're underwater
That's
in a swimming
wonderful.
pool?
You
no,
do?
Well, wait a minute. You're underwater in a swimming pool, okay. What I dream is being able to do that, you know, just only I'm flying.
Yeah.
You have that phenomenon?
That's called getting high.
No, well, I do this without chemical assistance.
You have repealed the law of gravity. Good for you. I mean, you're a closet altitude flyer, no question of that.
Better have it.
Excuse me, gentlemen, we have a guest for you.
This guy's a journalist. You realize what you're doing to it?
Where's Andre?
All right.
Where's Andre? Yeah.
Joe, what are you doing here? Why are you not off with Dan Rather wearing a funny hat in Afghanistan?
I was walking down the street, saw the crowds, and walked in.
Gordon, why do you think that two intelligent, well-educated, dedicated, idealistic, romantic, all-out guys like you and I are so unpopular?
Well, I don't know about you, but I've not encountered the reaction of people that would lead me to feel that I was so terribly unpopular.
Between the two of us, we've mopped up about 80% of the American people in mutual dislike.
Well, I don't know where you get your statistics, but the reason that I don't feel isolated from the rest of the country, I think there's some really nice things that happened to me since I got out of jail. In September 1980, I was inducted into the Honor Legion of the Police Department of the City of New York.
Oh, my God.
And I'm very proud of it.
No, but Timmy, this isn't one-sided. It's not a theory that I particularly subscribe to myself, but out there in the hinterland, in the dark fields of the Republic, there are a great number of people who think of both of you as being consummate scoundrels. Now, you can't just heap it all on him.
My position in the hinterland you're talking about isn't all that bad at all.
It's good. That's your...
No violent
I mean, if I were...
outbursts,
No, never.
No eggs, no...
Nothing like that. And were I John Dean, I'd probably hope that I had the courage to put a pistol in my mouth and do the right thing.
And what, incidentally, do you mean by your constituency? My people, his people?
Well, by his people, well, of course, I was a politician, so I tend to use the jargon, just as he was a hippie and he tends to use the jargon. But what I'm talking about is...
I was never a hippie.
Well, by God, I can remember you with the long hair and the band around your head, and if you weren't a hippie, you'd doodle one came along.
And the Hathaway shirt.
And the Hathaway shirt. The point is that each group, I think, gives credit to the other guy for having behaved correctly under adverse circumstances. That's all.
To answer your question, I'm delighted by controversy and shock and electric revulsion, what I say. I'm a philosopher, and a good philosopher is a change agent, and naturally is going to offend everyone that doesn't want things to change. Of course, most great philosophers, not that I'm saying I'm one, have always done time in prison.
He's a philosopher. It's just his philosophy's terrible. That's all.
Gordon, I really have a deep affection for you, and I feel you're cheating yourself out of opportunities in life just of curiosity. Don't you want to know what it's like to be high? Don't you want to know what it's like to be high one time in your life? To be relaxed, to be...
I've been high.
Have you ever
And I've been 20,000 feet with 2 oil burners behind me, everything to the wall.
I've done
That's high.
Oh, that's your version of high, but you must realize that there are
I've been 500 knots, man. I mean, that's high.
Your brain is filled with possibilities of discovery and eroticism and openness and...
I agree with you on eroticism. I get quite enough eroticism right now.
I know, I always give that point away. But how do you account for the fact that 70, 80 million of us enjoy moving our minds around in different ways, laying down the guard of being worried? You're always a warrior. I've watched you. You're always looking around. Wouldn't you like
Where
to...
are my surroundings?
Yeah.
You get on the Lexington Avenue subway in New York City,
Come on,
and you
we're not
don't look
talking
around.
about
You're in a world of trouble, Timothy.
Well, you and I don't go.
And you're not going to talk him out of it.
I agree.
You got to look him in the eye, and you got to convey.
Now, listen, I've done that, Gordon. I've been in 40 prisons, and I've faced eyeball to eyeball Mexican mafia, Corsican mafia, Sicilian mafia. I've dealt with every one of the gangs, the Hells Angels, the Black Panthers. I've had it out with Eldridge Cleaver, face to face, the Weathermen, the left wing, the right wing. So, well, let's not be much about that, but you're cutting yourself off from so much that the younger generation wants to offer you. We don't want you to spend the rest of your life fighting and burners and bombs away. There's a whole other aspect of life which has to do with receptivity, gentleness, openness. I want to share that with you,
Gordon. I'm very,
Gordon.
very happy with the natural equipment with which I came.
You're not using it. Your brain has receptors.
I have an M1A1 brain, which I was issued at birth. I have worked on it in universities and this and the other thing. Now, what I have not done
is fry my circuits. I have
Come on, there you
no
go.
desire
There
to fry
you
my
go.
circuits.
My circus, I've taken LSD 5,000 times, and do you feel that...
Do you think he's changed a
I've
lot?
held my own.
When was it, 1966, when you first attempted to arrest him?
No, I have to say, he really hasn't. I mean, he was...
Compare me with...
Were his circuits fried in 66?
Compare me with the sheriff or the D.A. Heilman. Compare my circuitry.
No, wait a minute. All right.
Come on.
I'll do exactly that. Hold it. Just let me do it, okay?
Could either one of them
Will
get
you
a...
let me do it?
Sure.
Okay, you've asked a question. Now, what you have said is, compare the brain of a walnut. Right? That's the DA.
That was your boss, Heilman.
Heilman, right.
Uh-huh.
With a man
Who ordered
was
you
able,
to bust
with
me
a
in my
man.
bedroom?
No. With the court.
So you were
did.
taking orders from a walnut. If your ideas are accepted, I'm in trouble.
No, you're
And
not.
the
No,
millions,
My ideas are
70
accepted.
million people who
Look,
agree with me are in trouble.
the
because
Soviet Union took over.
freedom to you is
You'll
what
be one of
you
the first
want to do.
people
You'll
shot.
kill who you want to kill when you want to. You'll bug who...
I'd probably be sent to the Gulag, but you would be shot. But if my ideas prevail, we will protect you, and you will be free to go around this land spouting all this foolishness in perpetuity.
Gordon, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to lead you, kicking and screaming, giggling and laughing into the future. I'm going to relax you. I'm going to get you. I'm going to get
Not
you.
unless I eat some of that funny food that you're...
Timmy, let me ask you. You two sound like an old...
There we go.
You two sound like an old married couple.
Hi, gentlemen. How did you enjoy your dinner?
I thought what they had to say was very valid, and I think that there is a purpose for them going around, you know, and people listening to these two opposite poles. And, you know, they're not just giving this stuff and getting money. I think they're really fulfilling a good purpose.
I think it would probably make me feel a little bit better about it if their intent was to inform and enlighten rather than make some money for themselves.
Well, how do you know that?
I think their intent is to inform and enlighten. They're just getting money for it at the same time. Self-indulgence, you know? Why not? Why not get paid to inform and enlighten? But even if it isn't their intent, they're obviously doing it as long as people are willing to listen.
People believe what Liddy believes. People believe what Larry believes.
Learned more, you know, that was significant to me than I have in like last 3 weeks of summer school. I mean, the hours I spent in this classroom listening to these two guys has probably been like a very learning experience for me, and I was like,
Well,
something that's added to my knowledge a lot.
it's very important to our lifetime. I mean, these people have affected our past. I mean, the first 17 years of our lives was controlled in part by these people. And so we have to go from here. And anything they can tell us about what just happened or any suggestions they can give us so we can listen to them and weigh them at least is needed.
The thing
you
that's,
know,
that
it's wanted.
feels good about Leary is that he kind of gives us a lot of credit, you know. It really felt nice that he was saying, go take over or whatever. You know. I like it. I want to take over.
Yeah, have so much confidence in us and are so supportive of us. That's really nice.
Yeah, but in taking over, you're assuming leadership, which is what he's against. So how can you say that? Well, there's a lot of problems with this argument. I know, but I think they're both advocating chaos. I mean, there's so...
You don't have people in a position of power, but you have groups as opposed to one man, Nixon,